Alright, so earlier you saw me clicking these buttons from a mobile device, and so I just wanted to talk through kind of at a high level what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. It's pretty simple setup. I am using DNN, which is old school .NET Nuke, so I'm a very big DNN fan. We're still around and kicking, but I'm using DNN as a content management system for my personal site, and the theme that I have implemented here is responsive. So that's what we were seeing from the mobile device. So um, I've also got open particles build.particle.io, which is the in-browser IDE. There are different ways you can get code to the device, but this is the one I use because it's the easiest for me. And so what I want to do is talk through the code that I've got going here on the device, as well as the code that is running in the browser when a button gets clicked. So I'm not sure where it's easiest or best to get started here. I'm very visual, so typically I would start kind of on the front end. But we'll look at the particle code first. So, if you're not into IoT or like Arduino or particle development, this may be a little foreign to you. I've also got open the docs.particle.io, which is an awesome site. Their documentation is really great, very visual. And so this is where I learned. So basically just following these steps. And I don't consider myself to be a very senior programmer here. I'm just basically getting motors to spin. But let's talk through this. So in any program, you're going to have a loop and you're going to have a setup. The setup is the code that's going to run when the program initializes, and then the loop is what's constantly going to be going over and over and over. So I currently have some things happening during the setup, and I don't have anything that's happening over and over in the loop. So mostly what I've got are just functions that I am calling. So I am essentially setting up those three servos. So I'm just giving them names, and this is referencing uh, you know particle code and these libraries that are needed, or the code that's needed to establish or instantiate a servo. So, and I guess I should pause and say that you've got all these options here in the IDE. The flash is how you will flash code to the device. The verify is like compile and make sure you don't have any errors. And then you've got the save. You've also got code, which is the view we're in right now. And I referenced the libraries. You have the libraries that you can include. You got help, and you got docs, and then devices. So you can see some of the other devices that I've got. And then you've got various settings that you can access here. So here's my token, which I will blur out. But anyways, it's a very, very neat system here. So like I said, I was getting these three servos established. And I also put down an LED light on D7. So, this is one way I do some debugging. But essentially, I'm attaching these servos. So once you establish the servos, you need to attach them and tell them what pin you're using. So on the particle photon, I am using pins D0 right here, D1, and D3. Those pins have pulse width modulation, and that's why I'm using them, because I need that signal in order to drive the motors. So when the system turns on, I'm just telling it to write to various positions. And so in this case, the blow air servo is just making sure that the nozzle has enough space to be up so that it is not pressed down. The head servo means that the head is going to be centered, and the head roll servo again is going to be centered, so as if the clown is looking directly at you. Alright, so what I want to do is illustrate what happens during the setup portion of the code. So you can see I have turned the head to the right a little bit, and I have tilted the head to the right as well. And so when we give the system power, you'll see photon connects, and then it writes to the position that is in the setup code. And so that's exactly what we want it to do. Now particle, you see this particle.function, this gives us cloud functions, which particle only gives us so many. I think it may be 5 or 10. I can't remember what the count is now, but this is essentially the API endpoint web service that I'm going to hit. I'm giving it a name. It will be created for me. And then this is the function that I'm going to call whenever someone hits that web service. So if you scroll down, you can see I've got this blow air control. So this is the function that will run whenever this is hit. So, and it's the same thing for all three of these. I'm just attaching them, telling them to get to a certain position, and then I'm establishing a web API endpoint or web service that I can hit in order to, call them from the web. So if we look at the functions, you can see I'm running an if statement. If the command equals blow air, which this is a parameter. Now you may say, well, where does that come from? So when this button is clicked, it's going to send the parameter. Now I've also got open a notepad document, and so these are just JavaScript snippets that I've just got them here because the syntax highlighting helps me. Ultimately, that is the code that's going to run behind when these buttons get clicked. So if I go into edit mode here within DNN, what I can do, and this is just a typical WYSIWYG editor, and I've just got put in some spaces here. It's not the best way to do it, but I've got buttons created, and you can see I'm giving them an ID. So this one is the blow air button with the text of blow air, and in the module settings, I am coming in and I am dropping this JavaScript. So this above is just the styling for the buttons to make them blue and big. But this JavaScript snippet is the same thing that is happening right here. So again, you can see this is a JavaScript function, blow air, and I'm passing in the servo position value. And so this is the API endpoint that I am hitting, and you can see my blow air function. So that blow air right there aligns with the blow air function that we established here. Okay, so when someone clicks the button, and so this is jQuery, by the way. I mean, you probably already know that, but I'm just saying when this button is clicked, which is again this blow air button here, when somebody clicks that button, then I want you to run a function blow air control, and what we're going to do is we're going to pass in this blow air as a parameter to this endpoint, and you can see it's using my access token, which I can recycle at any moment to validate or authenticate me essentially. So when we go back to particle, I'm sorry, I'm clicking around here. So in this blow air, I'm saying if the command equals blow air, then I want you to write the servo to 95, delay a second, then write the servo back to 120. So it's essentially just moving that arm just a little bit and then coming back off. And when that arm goes down, it's going to hit the air nozzle, which will blow air. So, and then I'm essentially repeating that same scenario for all of these. The only difference is this one is the head control. Okay, so this is the head spin. So if I minimize these, you can see the head control. So this is the second one. And the head control is the function, and the move head is the endpoint. So if you look here, we'll have the move head, okay? And again, we're just passing in the servo position value, which in this case is just a string of head center, head right, head left. And you can see I'm also console logging. So for example, if we go back here and I bring up the console, all right, so when we bring up the console, and I'll just close edit mode. But when I click any of these, I'm logging something, and this is just one way that I help myself debug. So head roll center, clicked, head right. So I'm just making sure that I don't get any errors, because if you were to, for example, let's say that I misspelled something in this, it would give me a 404. It would say that does not exist. So anyways, like I said, I'm just, saying when these buttons get clicked, then I'm passing in these parameters, and these parameters are going through the cloud functions that Particle offers me, and then I'm just basically reading out the string, comparing them. So yes, there's probably better ways to code this out, but for me, I just try to keep it simple. If this was an enterprise application, obviously we could refactor it, run case statements or what have you. So anyways, on the head control, again, spinning the clown's head left and right, I'm just saying, move it to the center, move it to the right, move it to the left. And so these are what I typically just start with, but those aren't what I generally use in the end. In the end, I typically just use a sequence. And so this will like move the head to the left, move the head to the center, then to the right, then back to the center. So again, we could refactor these out into, functions that would probably read more easily and be better use or better suited. But again, I'm just keeping it simple here on a weekend project. But anyways, we've got the blow air, we've got the head roll, and we've got the head spin. And so actually, I think I had changed the order of these when I was doing some testing earlier. So the next one would be that head roll. So the head roll, and here I was just laying out the buttons. The head roll follows the same, setup. We're just calling a function, hitting a specific URL. Here we have the roll head function, which again aligns with the where I established it here, the roll head particle function, which is going to call this head roll control function here in the firmware or in the code that's going to run on the actual device. And here again, I'm just reading the string. Is it a head roll center, head roll right, head roll left? And when that happens, you can see I'm like turning the LED on, then I'm trying to write to a servo to a certain position, then I'm turning it off. So the first thing I'll do is I will, just try to make the light come on that's on that photon, because if the light comes on, then I know that it is actually hitting that endpoint and getting data. So, again, writing to a specific position, and we're just repeating it. And then again, like I said, I usually end up with a sequence. Which is what you saw when the clown was moving. So, and I added some comments here because it was getting a little bit long. So that is essentially it as far as the code that I'm using on the actual device. And again, this is the code that I'm using on the front end within my DNN site, which is just offering me a mobile interface, so that when I'm outside, I can just easily click the buttons and then cause these servos to move. So I know this is a very high-level overview. If you have any specific questions about specific parts of the code here that I'm running on the front end, or DNN in general, or the code that I'm running here with Particle, feel free to comment and ask the question. I'm happy to try to help out. So this is, again, just a fun weekend project. We're going to try to scare some kids here at Halloween with some IOT.